CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I was a dark web harvester for a cult. One night, the people we took weren't what they seemed. Alright, I never thought I'd be the type of guy to post anything on Reddit, especially not here on r/NOSLEEP. But I've been sitting with this story in my head for almost a year now, and every time I try to forget it, something reminds me. Like the other day, I was just scrolling through TikTok at 2 a.m., half asleep, and this random live popped up. It was some guy in a hoodie talking about the deep web and how it's not as scary as people think. That was enough to send a full-body chill down my spine. Because let me tell you, it is. It's worse than scary. It's wrong. I used to think all those deep web stories were BS, just creepy internet myths people told to get clicks. But no, they're real. Or at least what I got pulled into was. I wasn't just some edgy teen ordering mystery boxes or trying to join a red room for kicks. I was a harvester. And if you don't know what that is, you're better off not knowing. But I'll tell you anyway. Because after what happened that night, I think people deserve to know what's really going on out there. So this all started about 2 years ago. I was 22, broke and stupid. I dropped out of college in Chicago after my financial aid fell through, and I was couch surfing with my friend Eli in a crappy one-bedroom apartment above a 24-hour laundromat near a sketchy-ass McDonald's on the south side. You could smell burnt grease through the walls, and sometimes the power would flicker whenever the guy downstairs ran all the dryers at once. Anyway, I was messing around on Discord one night in this tech server I joined back in school, mostly programmers and crypto bros, and I ended up DMing with this guy who went by Zero Nix. We were talking about freelance gigs, side hustles, stuff like that. He said he made crazy money running scripts for clients on the dark web. I asked him what kind of scripts, and he said something like, nothing illegal, just ethically gray. UN. And I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. But I said, sure, that's how it started. At first the jobs were weird, but nothing insane. He'd send me links to sites only accessible through Tor browsers and VPN chains. I had to verify addresses, scrape user data, sometimes send weird texts to burner numbers, like I'd message random people with coordinates or phrases in weird languages, and then mark down if they replied. It was all anonymous, all through encrypted chats, and always paid in Monero or Bitcoin. I made more in my first week than I had the entire previous month delivering Uber Eats. So I kept going. Then came the harvesting jobs. One night, Zeronix messaged me directly. New tier, ket as $1 a hit. You in? I said, what kind of hits? He replied, not what you think, we're just collecting. Data, location, presence. That's all. It sounded vague as hell, but I was broke and dumb, remember? So I said yes. That's when I got invited to a private Zoom call, except it wasn't Zoom. It looked like Zoom, but the interface was off. No logo, no bottom bar, just a black screen and a white blinking text, initiating session 1. Then these faces popped up, all black hoods, like monks or something. One guy, he called himself caretaker, did all the talking. His voice was muffled, like it was coming through a fan. He gave me 3 rules. Never speak the names of the ones we tag. Never return to a harvest location. If they speak to you, run. Yeah, that last one, I should have asked way more questions. So here's what a harvest looked like. They'd send me an address, always public, always busy. Places like Starbucks, Central Park, the CN Tower in Toronto once. I'd go there, blend in, and find the person they described, usually by a super detailed profile. Height, clothes, time of day they arrive, sometimes even what drink they'd order. My job was to get within 10 feet, open a Bluetooth tool on my phone, let it ping for about 20 seconds. That's it. They said it was proximity harvesting, some kind of biometric data scraping. No touching, no talking, just close enough. And again, they paid well. I did this for 3 months, got used to it, started seeing the same faces, same routines, like this girl in Times Square who always wore the same red scarf, even when it was 80 degrees out, or the guy at a Waffle House in Atlanta who'd sit perfectly still for hours, not even eating. None of them ever looked at me, like they didn't even know I was there. I figured maybe they were plants, actors, glitched NPCs, whatever. But then came session 12, and everything changed. Zonix messaged me at 1:47 a.m. He said the next target would be in a park outside Boise, Idaho, of all places. Real remote. I'd have to fly out there, on their dime. I should have said no, but curiosity and the $8,000 they offered got the better of me. So yeah, I flew out. Met this weird dude at the airport holding a sign that said Lyndon. That wasn't my name. When I walked up to him, he just nodded and said, "Cars out front." The park was empty, cold, foggy. It was like a scene straight out of a horror movie. Pine trees everywhere. No lights, no trails, just dead leaves and silence. The guy handed me a phone, said I'd know who to harvest when I saw them. He drove off, left me alone with the fog and that phone. The screen was black, just a single line of text that read, "Wait until 3:33 a.m. So I waited, and at exactly 3:33, I heard footsteps. But the thing that came out of the woods, it wasn't a person. I've never been able to describe fear properly until that night. Not the kind of fear where your heart races because you almost dropped your phone, or you hear noise in the hallway when you're home alone. Number. I'm talking about that core-rotting, soul-freezing terror that hijacks your body and makes you forget what breathing feels like. Because what stepped out of the trees at 3:33 a.m. in that Idaho park wasn't human. It looked like one, but everything about it was wrong. Like it was someone playing dress-up in a person's skin, but they'd never actually seen a human move before. The way it walked, it wasn't limping or injured. It was like its joints were relearning how to exist. Its head tilted slightly every few seconds, twitching like a glitch in an old VHS tape. It would stop, freeze, then jerk its whole body forward like it was catching up with itself. I was too scared to run, too confused to move. My phone vibrated. One word flashed on the screen. Begin. That one word felt like a sentence in the biblical sense, a punishment. So I opened the Bluetooth Scrambler app, hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. The second the signal went live, the thing snapped its head toward me. I mean instantly, like it had been waiting for me to activate something. Its eyes, I'll never forget them, were wrong. They were the right color, shape, everything, but they didn't blink. They didn't react. It was like someone had copy-pasted high-resolution eyes onto a low-poly face. The mouth was stretched in this too wide smile, but the skin around it didn't crease or wrinkle. It was tight, like it had been stapled there. Then it spoke. Its voice didn't match its mouth movements. It sounded like a chorus of children whispering into a fan, but the sentence it said was clear enough to freeze the marrow in my bones. "You're not supposed to see us." I don't remember screaming. I don't even remember dropping the phone. But I must have run, because the next thing I knew, I was shoulder deep in pine branches, tearing through the woods like a lunatic. I tripped, ate dirt, got back up. I should have kept running, but I turned around. That thing, it wasn't alone. More of them were stepping out from the trees. Some were crawling, moving like insects. One had a neck that bent all the way backward, and its mouth opened sideways. Another was wearing what looked like a police uniform, but it was soaked in something thick and dark that didn't move like blood. It glimmered like oil in moonlight. They all had the same eyes, and they were all smiling. Then I heard it, a noise I never want to hear again, not in this life or any other. It was like a dial-up modem screaming through a choir of babies crying, piercing mechanical agony. I dropped to my knees and threw up. My nose started bleeding instantly. My eardrums popped like bubble wrap. Blood poured down my neck, hot and sticky, and I started convulsing. One of them moved toward me. It didn't walk. It slid, like it was being dragged by something invisible. When it got close, it crouched, its knees bending the wrong way, and it leaned in real close. Its breath smelled like copper and burnt plastic. Then it said, in my voice, "This isn't for you, Lyndon." How did it know the name on the output sign? How did it know my voice? I don't remember getting back to the parking lot. I woke up in the back of the car. The guy from before was driving, but he looked different, like facially. He had the same hoodie, same build, but his face, not even close. I asked him what happened. He didn't answer, just handed me a paper bag with my phone, a plane ticket, and a note. The note read, "One more harvest, then you're done." That was a lie. After that night, I tried quitting. I blocked 0 nicks, wiped my drives, got a new phone, moved in with my cousin in Oregon, and tried to forget any of it ever happened. For a while, it worked. I worked a normal job at a Target warehouse. Slept with the lights on, sure, but I slept. Then, about a month later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was just a burner phone and a single Polaroid. It was a picture of me sleeping, and behind me, barely visible in the closet mirror, was one of them. I started seeing them in crowds, not all at once, just enough to make me question my sanity, like the woman in a green coat at the DMV who kept blinking out of sync, or the little kid on the subway whose mouth never closed. Ever. I'd catch them watching me, then they'd be gone. I spiraled, started tracking locations I'd harvested at before, and the pattern I found, it still gives me chills. Everyone I'd gotten close to with the Bluetooth app, they disappeared. No news coverage, no social media chatter, just vanished. I even checked their TikToks, Instagrams, Twitter accounts, all wiped. Not deactivated, erased, as if they'd never existed. But here's the worst part. Some of them started showing up in other people's accounts, in the background of a Starbucks selfie in Vienna, a blurry reflection in a YouTube prank video filmed in LA, even a BBC News report about flooding in Jakarta. They weren't themselves anymore, just copies. I knew then that I hadn't been harvesting data, I was harvesting bodies. Whatever I'd been working for, whoever they weren't using Bluetooth to scrape biometrics. They were taking people, copying them, wearing them, and somehow, through me, they'd found a way to get close without being noticed. Until that night in the woods. That night, something went wrong. I tried reaching out to Zero Nix one last time. I went back into the tech Discord under a new burner, pretended to be a newbie looking for crypto gigs. Eventually, I got a ping. It wasn't Zero Nix this time. It was someone named Garden Father. He said something I'll never forget. You don't understand the role you played. The ones you harvested weren't people. They were locks. Now, the doors are open. He sent me a link. Just a blank page with a timestamp. April 29th, 3:33 a.m. 2 nights ago. I didn't sleep that night. I waited, sitting alone in the living room, with every light on, knife in hand, windows boarded. I had cameras on every corner. At exactly 3:33 a.m., every single light in the house blew out at once. Then my phone lit up. One word. Begin. I don't know what they're planning. I don't know why me. But I think they're here now. And I don't think they want to be hidden anymore. When the lights blew out at 3:33 a.m. and my phone buzzed with that one-word message, begin, I swear I could hear breathing. Not outside, not behind me, inside me, like something was humming low, just beneath my heartbeat. I didn't move for 6 straight minutes, just stood there in the dark, with the kitchen knife clenched so hard in my fist, I sliced into my own palm without noticing. The pain didn't register. I was too focused on what I knew was about to happen, but nothing did. Not right away. No flickering faces in the window. No knocks on the door. Just silence. Until I turned on my phone flashlight. The moment I did, my phone opened to the camera on its own, and I saw something I shouldn't have seen, because the camera wasn't pointing in front of me. It was pointed at me. But I wasn't holding the phone in selfie mode. There was something behind me. Not a person. Not one of them. This was different. A tall, hairless thing crouched in the corner of the room, wearing my old face. Let me say that again. It was me. Me from about a year ago, maybe more. Same acne scar under the eye. Same gray hoodie I lost in a laundromat in Atlanta. Same stupid expression I used to make when I smoked too much weed. Only the skin was loose, like it didn't quite fit anymore. The eyes were too round, too alive. And worst of all, it was smiling, not like a person smiles. It was smiling like it was trying to remember how, stretching the lips too wide, holding it too long, muscles twitching under the strain of imitating life. I turned to look for it, knife up, scream half choked in my throat, but it was gone. Just a damp circle on the floor, and a faint smell like warm pennies and bleach. The next day, I started researching. I mean really researching, not on Google. That would have been a joke. I had to go deeper. I remembered a backdoor Tor forum I'd seen years ago. A buried place called the Archive of the Forgotten. It was where all the digital ghosts went to scream. No login, no password. You had to know the hexadecimal seed and key it into your URL manually. I hadn't touched it since 2020, but it was still there. Only now, the layout was different. It looked like a corrupted museum exhibit. No menus, just one looping video on the front page. I forced myself to watch it. It was CCTV footage, grainy, time-stamped from 2007. A little girl in a hotel hallway. She's just standing there, holding a pink balloon, for 43 straight minutes. She never blinks. At 43:17, a man in a bathrobe opens his room door across the hall and smiles at her. At 43:23, the video glitches, and suddenly the hallway is covered in red. I mean, the walls, floor, even the ceiling, just soaked. The balloon is on the floor. The little girl is gone. The man in the bathrobe is standing completely still, head tilted exactly the way that thing in Idaho tilted at me. Mouth wide, eyes removed, not gouged out, just absent, like they'd never existed at all. Then, frame by frame, the red starts crawling toward the camera, like it knows it's being watched. The moment I clicked away, the whole page updated. New text appeared across the bottom. You are being remembered. That single sentence felt like an obituary someone had written for my future self. The site refreshed again. This time, it dropped me into a directory. Thousands of files, all named after people. At first, I thought they were fake, just edgy usernames or whatever. But then I saw one labeled Eli Robinson Chicago, 2021. That's my roommate, the one I was staying with when this whole thing began. I clicked on it. The folder had photos, not screenshots. Actual photos taken from inside our apartment. Some I recognized. Me asleep on the couch, Eli on a Discord call, our trash-strewn kitchen. But others were from angles that no human could have physically taken, like from inside the fridge, under the bed, behind the mirror. The last file was a .wav audio file, just static. Then, barely audible, Eli whispering, "It's not a cult, it's a library." I vomited, hard, into the sink. Couldn't stop shaking, because I knew what he meant. The harvests. They weren't just kidnappings or body snatchings. They were curations. I hadn't been working for a cult. I'd been working for something older, something archival, something that collects people like books, like volumes, preserving them in forms that aren't quite accurate, like how you stuff and mount an animal and pretend it's still alive. And now it wanted me. I didn't sleep for 3 straight days. The third night, I passed out on the floor with the lights on, and I woke up in a place I don't remember falling asleep in. It looked like a morgue, stainless steel, humming overhead lights. My arms were strapped to a table. I wasn't alone. Standing over me was caretaker. I recognized the hood, the voice, but this time I could see what was beneath the hood. I wish I hadn't. He had no eyes, no ears. His face was a swirling blur, like melted wax being stirred. But the mouth was perfect. Too perfect. Like it had been stolen from a Calvin Klein model and pasted onto whatever this thing actually was. He leaned over and whispered, "You were never supposed to remember the library." Then he showed me a screen, just rows and rows of numbers. It was my harvest log, names, locations, timestamps. But the final entry, it was me. Name, Linden status, pending completion date, April 29th, 3:33 a.m. I screamed, cried, begged. Caretaker just tilted his head and said one more thing before everything went black. Every library needs its final volume. I woke up in my bed, sweating, bleeding from the nose, knife still clutched in my hand. But my phone, It was gone. And then today, I got an email from a sender named Noel.Corpus. No subject, no message, just one attachment, a video. It was me, present day, sitting right here, typing this, from a third-person angle, except I wasn't moving like myself. My shoulders were hunched, my head twitching in that familiar way. And when the camera zoomed into my face, it wasn't me, not anymore. When I saw that video of me sitting here, typing this exact story, I stopped breathing for a full minute. I replayed it 17 times, looking for a seam, a glitch, anything that would tell me it was fake. But it wasn't. I could hear the radiator behind me hissing like it always does when the heat kicks in. The yellowed blinds rattling softly in the wind. The distant echo of a baby crying somewhere down the hall. The one who never stops crying at night. It was real. Only, it wasn't me. The thing in the video, it moved like a marionette missing two strings. Its head would snap to the screen with these quick bird-like motions, fingers twitching like they were waiting for permission. And its face, God help me, it was mine, but drained, like someone had vacuum sealed the soul out of it. There was one moment, frame 242, I counted, where it looked directly into the camera, not at the screen, not at the keyboard, directly, addressed me, and its mouth moved, even though the video had no sound. I paused, enhanced, watched it again. The lips were saying, "I'm waiting for you." That's when I lost it. I destroyed my laptop with a hammer, smashed my phone, punched the mirror in my bathroom so hard I bled all over the sink. But it didn't help. It was inside now, not just in my devices, in me. Every time I blinked, I saw them, faces and reflections that didn't match mine, shadows that stayed after I moved, memories that weren't mine. One of them was the worst. I was strapped to a chair in a pitch-black room, concrete walls, metal floor, no sound except a high-pitched tone, like a dentist drill a mile away. My body wasn't mine. I could feel it, but it wasn't responding. Across from me was a two-way mirror, except it wasn't glass. It was skin, tight, pale skin stretched over a frame, pulsing like it was breathing. Behind it, I could see shapes, moving, watching. Some of them pressed faces into the flesh and stared out. Others just stood. I don't know how long I was there. Minutes? Hours? A week? Eventually, one of the shapes stepped through the skin like it wasn't even there. It was wearing a white lab coat, blood dripping from the sleeves, and it rolled in a spine. Not a person, not a skeleton. A living, twitching, vertical spinal cord mounted to a cart, tubes running through it, hooks dangling from nerve endings like ornaments. It was alive, moving, twitching, reacting. They called it the spine. The creature whispered something as it ran a finger down my neck, tracing my vertebrae like piano keys. You brought us too many doors. What happened next, I can't even put into words. The spine leaned forward and spoke to me, not in sound, not even in thought. It injected ideas directly into my mind, like a needle stabbing through the base of my skull. I could feel knowledge burning through my neurons, images, places, instructions. I saw a map of the world, but it wasn't our world. It was overlaid with another, a mirror map, where the oceans were black and the continents were all slightly wrong, bent, warped, rotten, and across the map were pins, red ones. Each one was a person I had harvested. Each one had been taken from here and replicated there. And now the pins were moving, spreading. I woke up in my bathtub, fully clothed, hands duct taped, mouth full of what I thought was cotton. It was teeth, human teeth jammed into my mouth like someone had been feeding them to me while I slept. My arms were covered in numbers, latitude, longitude, timestamps, coordinates that didn't exist on any map I checked, until I remembered the other map, the mirror map. I rebuilt my laptop using spare parts from a pawn shop and booted into a deep Tor tunnel using an air-gapped USB. I pulled the archive again. It was still there, more active than before, but it had a new tab now. The transfer. I clicked it. The page displayed a real-time feed of people, thousands of people, faces from security cams, TikTok lives, Twitch streams, all being indexed and categorized by something not human, a crawler, an intelligence. I watched a live stream from a mall in Dubai, a woman sipping Starbucks. She smiled at the camera. The crawler highlighted her face in red. Then the stream cut to static. The next file was a photo of her, alone, in a dark room, wearing a face that was too tight. They weren't just collecting anymore. They were replacing. I cross-referenced the coordinates from my arm. They pointed to abandoned subway stations, closed Walmarts, decommissioned data centers, even an island in the Pacific that doesn't show up on Google Earth. Every location formed a spiral, a perfect sprawling spine stretching across the earth. Each segment of the spiral, a hub, a library branch, and at the center, Boise, Idaho, that fucking park. I went back. I had to. I took every dime I had left and flew there, slept in the airport, bought a burner phone, no electronics, no metal, just clothes, water, and a disposable camcorder I got from a dying Walgreens. I made it to the park at 3:28 a.m. This time, there was no fog, no figure waiting, just silence, until I heard the song. It was playing faintly from underground, a nursery rhyme, too slow, too broken. Tiptoe, little shadow, through the library door. Don't forget your borrowed mask, or you'll become the floor. I followed it, found an old hatch covered in dead leaves. No lock, no hinges, just open. I went in. The underground was worse than I imagined. Endless corridors, walls made of pulsing flesh, not stone. Faces grew out of them, harvested faces, their mouths twitching silently. Some were people I remembered, some were me. The deeper I went, the more I felt like I was being absorbed. The air got thicker. My body felt heavier. My memories started to stutter, like my brain was buffering. Then I saw the final door, a massive circular vault. Written in bone across the arch were the words, "Final Archive. Input required." There was a slot in the door, a flesh scanner. It pulsed when I got close. I pulled out the knife I brought, and I cut off my own thumb, screaming, bleeding, crying. I jammed it into the slot. The door opened. I can't describe what I saw in there. Not because I forgot, because it refuses to be remembered. I wrote it down the second I left. Every word of it burned off the paper. The video I took, blank static, audio, corrupted. But I can tell you this, there's not just one library. There are many, one under every city, and they're full. And soon, they'll need new shelves. I haven't eaten in 3 days. I haven't slept in 5. There's something growing in my walls, behind the drywall. I hear it shift at night, like wet fabric being dragged across broken tile. It knows I came back from the vault. It knows I opened the final archive. And worst of all, it remembers things I never told anyone. Voicemails I deleted. Secrets I only ever thought about. Memories I never lived. I don't know how much longer I can stay conscious. Every time I blink, it pulls something out of me. A word, a face, a little thread of who I am, and I can feel it weaving another me in the dark. But before I go, you need to hear what I saw. The truth. Because this isn't about a cult. It never was. This is a mass extinction event, but not of bodies, of identities. When the vault door opened, I stepped into what can only be described as the mind of God after a nervous breakdown. There were rows of shelves made of calcified nerve endings, twisting into spires. Along them were jars, thousands of them, each one pulsing faintly. Inside the jars, people, folded up like paper dolls, eyes twitching, mouths silently screaming. I passed a jar labeled Jacob Linwood, Florida, 2003. The man inside looked alive, aged, gray-bearded, but he couldn't move. He was looping, his face twitching through the same silent scream every 4 seconds. Next jar, Candice Moroku, Tokyo, 2018. Her fingers were fused into a single point, like a stylus. Her mouth was gone, just skin. Her eyes bled in spirals. Then I saw mine. Linden prototype, C active sync. My own face, blank, sleeping, breathing, and just for a moment, it opened its eyes. I don't remember falling, but suddenly I was in another room, larger, darker, colder than the rest. The air vibrated like it was under pressure. There were no walls, just floating slabs of flesh that hovered like jellyfish. On each one was a different version of me. One was me, with no skin, just red tissue stretched over bones. It was smiling, eyes too wide. Another was a version of me, with no mouth, but 6 hands, all gripping its own face, trying to pull it apart. And the one at the center, it was perfect, too perfect. Clothes ironed, hair neat, standing tall. It looked straight at me, and in my voice, but without moving its mouth, it said, "You were the last one missing, the final scan, the last permission we needed. You opened the archive. Now we are free to print." Print. That's the word that destroyed my understanding of what's real. Because we're not being replaced, we're being duplicated. There's a factory, deep beneath the spiral, buried so far into the earth, it might as well be under the ocean. It doesn't use machines. It uses us. Each harvest, each time I scraped a signal with that Bluetooth tool, that wasn't stealing data. It was duplicating a consciousness, a live copy. And once a copy is perfect enough, they don't need the original. They archive it permanently. I saw the room where they store the failed copies, a chamber shaped like a heart, pulsing with thick black fluid. Floating in it were hundreds, no, thousands of versions of people I recognized. A Twitch streamer I used to watch, floating upside down, whispering his own username over and over like a chant. An old co-worker from Target, fused into the wall, his eyes replaced with blinking QR codes. My own mother, she was there, or at least a copy. Bloated, hair like seaweed, skin flayed and repositioned like a butterfly pinned in a display case. She opened her mouth and said, in a voice layered with static and screaming children, "Your copy is already alive. You are outdated. They never meant to replace us. That's too slow. They're uploading us into a world just 1 inch left of reality. A mirrored simulation, tethered to ours like a parasite feeding on identity. And when enough people are synced, the servers switch. Their world becomes ours. And we become them, twisted, rewritten, forgotten, like a scratched DVD playing a different scene every time you hit play." I ran, clawed my way through a tunnel of bone and plastic and skin until I burst out of the hatch and into daylight. But the sky was wrong. clouds in patterns too symmetrical, a plane overhead, frozen mid-flight. A dog barked in reverse. I wasn't in Idaho anymore. I wasn't in our world. I woke up a day later in a Motel 6, 20 miles outside Denver. My clothes were clean. My phone was back. Battery 100%. A single new message. Sync complete. I checked the mirror. My reflection smiled before I did. It waved. And behind it, in the foggy glass, I could see another me, peeling open its chest like a zipper, revealing a spine made of wires and names. You reading this? You heard my voice, somewhere deep in your mind. I know it, because that's the final step. Propagation. Each time the story is told, each time you imagine it, it spreads, it grows, it plants your seed in the archive, and then it watches you for weeks, for months, until you blink, until your duplicate wakes up, and you become the echo, the blur, the shelf. So let me ask you something. Look in the mirror. Now tell me, was that really your face that moved first? Me and my brother took things so far on the dark web on April Fool's Day. Okay, I don't even know how to start this without sounding like some weirdo making stuff up for clicks. But whatever. Believe it or not, I just need to get this out. It's been eating me alive for months. If I don't tell someone, I might actually go insane. So yeah, my name's Kyle. I'm 19. I live just outside of Columbus, Ohio, in this boring, dead-end suburban town where nothing ever happens unless you make it happen. You know what I mean? Like, we got a Target, a Taco Bell, and this one really sketchy gas station with a flickering neon open sign that everyone swears is haunted. Typical Midwest stuff. Anyway, this all started on April Fool's Day. Me and my older brother Zach, he's 22. We've always been into techie stuff, gaming and all that. We grew up watching YouTubers like Luna, Some Ordinary Gamers, and browsing r/creepypasta like it was gospel. We used to joke about the deep web and all those scary stories you hear, like red rooms and weird auctions for organs or whatever. It was always just a joke, until it wasn't. That night, April 1st, we were chilling in Zach's room. He'd set up his dual monitors, LED lights glowing red. He thought it was vibey. I thought it made the room feel like the inside of a microwave. He was scrolling Reddit, looking for pranks we could pull on people, and I was on Discord talking with friends. Zach suddenly goes, "Hey, you remember that one guy on YouTube who said you could access the deep web with just a VPN and Tor? What if we did that, like for April Fools?" I was like, yeah, haha, let's prank ourselves into getting on a watch list. But Zach, being Zach, was already downloading the Tor browser like it was no big deal. "Come on," he said, "we won't do anything illegal, we'll just look." Like window shopping, but for weird internet stuff. At first, it was kind of funny. The Onion sites looked like something out of a 2002 sci-fi movie. Mostly garbage, forums in Russian, sketchy drug sites, and pages that just said 404 with creepy, glitchy text. But then we found this site, and this is where things started to go sideways. It was called happychains.org. The URL was something like happychains7kq.onion and had a super old school UI. Just white text on a black background. No images, no logo. Just a message at the top that said, "Welcome to the April collection. The foolish deserve to be watched." We thought it was an April Fool's joke, obviously. Like, haha. Very funny, scary, deep web page trying to be edgy. There were a bunch of links underneath with random names. Smiling girl in Starbucks, Seoul. McDonald's bathroom, 3:14 a.m., live. Dorm room feed, NYU East Building. Basement cam, Wichita, do not click. Zach was like, wait, live? Bro, this is like actual feeds? I shrugged it off and said, it's probably pre-recorded. There's no way these are real. But curiosity's a sick thing. We clicked on the Starbucks one, and I swear to you, this was not a prank. The stream loaded after a couple seconds. It was grainy, but I could clearly see this girl sitting alone by a window in a Starbucks. The timestamp said, Seoul, KR, April 1st, 3:06 p.m. And she looked scared, like not in a Scream horror movie way, more like that nervous twitch people get when they know someone's watching them but don't want to admit it. She kept glancing over her shoulder, stirring her coffee, tapping her phone screen like she was trying to keep herself busy. I asked, is this real time? Zach zoomed in a little, and the second he did, the girl froze. Froze. Mid-stir. Then she turned her head slowly, like unnaturally slow, and looked right at the camera. We both jumped back like, nah, that has to be fake. But the live chat popped up next to the feed. That's when my stomach dropped. It was filled with comments like, she knows. 5 seconds till pickup. Let the game begin. Fools watching the fool. Then the feed cut to static. Zach tried clicking on another one. The McDonald's bathroom, 3:14 a.m. Same kind of vibe. Grungy, barely lit restroom. No one inside. But as we watched, the store door opened just a crack, like someone inside was pushing it slightly. Then the chat started again. They're watching from Columbus. Say hi, fools. Keep watching. It gets better. Zach slammed the laptop shut. We just sat there, not saying a word. The room felt suddenly colder. I know that sounds cliche, but I swear, it's like the red LED lights looked darker, like the whole room was bleeding or something. A minute later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. No caller ID. It just said, "What time is it in Columbus, Kyle?" I looked at Zach. He looked at me. Neither of us had said where we lived. Not on Reddit, not on Discord, not on anything. Then another message popped in, this time with a photo. It was a grainy picture of us, taken from inside the room. My throat went dry when I saw that photo. It was taken from the corner of Zach's room, slightly tilted like it was snapped in a hurry. You could see me sitting cross-legged on the floor, him at his desk leaning forward, both our faces lit by the monitor. I could see the reflection of the Happy Chains site on the screen in the photo. The timestamp? It said April 1st, 12:08 a.m. We both stared at the screen, frozen. It wasn't just the fact that the photo was real. It was the angle. That corner. There's nothing there but a tall, dusty bookshelf. No cameras, no mirrors, no vents. But the photo was real. Down to the little tear in Zach's t-shirt and the bag of hot Cheetos I'd knocked over 5 minutes earlier. Zach stood up first, grabbed the baseball bat from under his bed, said nothing. He didn't need to. I followed him downstairs. We checked every room. The front door was locked. The garage was empty, windows shut. Then we noticed something we hadn't before. The basement door was unlocked. Now listen, this basement, nobody goes down there. It's unfinished, full of boxes, old furniture, and that weird musty smell that feels like it's permanently stained into the concrete. Our parents always kept it locked. especially after that raccoon incident 2 years ago. Zach slowly opened the door, and the smell hit first, like mildew, but also something worse, like copper, like something rotten. I swear to you, this part doesn't feel real. I still can't wrap my head around it. There was a light coming from the basement, a dim red glow. We crept down, step by step, Zach holding the bat like it was going to do anything if someone was down there. The further we went, the more we heard it. This soft, mechanical whirring noise, like a fan spinning, or a motor. When we hit the bottom, I nearly tripped over something. It was a tripod, and on it, mounted perfectly, was a small black webcam, a model I'd never seen before. No brand name, just a tiny blinking green LED on the side, plugged into nothing. We looked around. There were cables everywhere, wires running along the ceiling, tacked in with staples, like someone had been down there installing them for weeks. They led to a corner where an old CRT TV sat on a wooden crate with a tangled mess of Ethernet cords and a laptop I swear we didn't own. Zach didn't say a word. He walked over and opened the laptop. It turned on instantly. The screen? A live feed of us from the exact angle of that photo. But here's the worst part. There were multiple tabs open, dozens of them, each one titled like Room 4B-KY or Attic Cam-ABQ or Coffee Shop View-NYC. Hundreds of people, hundreds of feeds, and every single one had chat rooms open with comments flooding in. People were watching, commenting, betting, reacting. I clicked into one at random and saw a family eating dinner. Just eating. Normal night. But the chat was filled with things like, Dad's gonna blow soon, $200 on it. Wife knows, check her eyes. Timer started, 14 minutes. Then, suddenly, the dad in the video stood up and threw his plate at the wall. We shut the laptop, yanked out the cords. Zach smashed the webcam with the bat. We ripped everything out, hauled it upstairs. We were breathing hard. I felt sick. Then my phone buzzed again. A video this time. It was the girl from the Starbucks. She was in a different place now. A narrow, cold-looking hallway with metal walls and no windows. Like some underground bunker. She was still alive, but she wasn't moving much. Just swaying slowly. Her eyes glazed over. Her mouth stitched shut. And behind her, on the wall, was a black smear. Words written in what looked like dried blood. Happy April Fools. That was when we called the cops. Of course we did. What else would you do? They came fast, 3 cars deep. We told them everything. Well, not everything. We didn't mention the dark web, or the site, or the live streams. We just said we found a strange laptop and camera in our basement and thought someone had broken in. They took the laptop, told us they'd look into it, but they didn't. Because 2 days later, we got a letter. No stamp. Just slid under our front door in the middle of the night. Zach found it at 3:12 a.m. when he went down for water. Inside was a single sheet of paper, printed, perfectly scented. Tampering with the chains is a punishable offense. Your views are up 418% this week. Congratulations, Zach. You're trending. We didn't sleep for days. We kept every light on. We smashed the rest of the electronics in the basement, got new locks, moved our beds into the living room, and slept in shifts. But the world kept going like nothing happened. No cops returned. No one came to check on us. It was like it didn't matter. And then, a week later, something changed. Zach was gone. I woke up, and he just wasn't there. No note, no text, no calls. His car was still in the driveway, his shoes by the door. His phone, weirdly, was placed on the pillow, like he had carefully left it there for me to find. I unlocked it. The background had changed. It was a photo of me, sleeping, with the words, "You were the viewer, now you're the show." And in the reflection on the phone screen, no joke, I checked this like 15 times. There was a figure, standing at the foot of the bed, tall, wearing something like a burlap sack hoodie. No face, just this wide, toothy grin drawn in white chalk or something, and 2 words on its chest, in smeared red. "We see." Zach didn't come back. Not after an hour, not after a day, not after a week. I stopped sleeping entirely after the 3rd night. I'd just sit on the living room couch, clutching the aluminum baseball bat, like it would save me from whatever the hell had taken him. The silence wasn't just deafening, it was deliberate, like the air was holding its breath, waiting for something I couldn't see but could feel in every cell in my body. I didn't call anyone. I didn't go to the cops. What was I gonna say? Hey, my brother disappeared after we watched a stitched-mouthed girl on a live stream and found an illegal surveillance lab in our basement. They'd laugh. Or worse, they'd not laugh. They'd know. And I wasn't about to end up stitched to a wall in some underground corridor for someone else's entertainment. But the house wasn't empty. Not anymore. It started with little things, subtle things, things that shouldn't be scary, like objects not being where I left them. A chair turned just a few degrees toward the window. My toothbrush, wet and warm even though I hadn't touched it. The fridge door slightly cracked open at exactly 3:14 a.m. every night. I even tried recording it on my phone. But no matter how many times I set it up, the footage would always glitch around that exact minute. One morning, I woke up with a word written across my stomach in Sharpie. A CT. That was it. Nothing else. No symbols, no signature. Just one word. The marker had been pressed so deep into my skin, it left impressions that lasted for days after the ink faded. I started sleeping in the shower, only place with a door I could lock and see under. I blocked the drain with a towel and kept a box cutter under my thigh. I was ready for anything, but nothing ever came through the door. Instead, it came through the walls. On the 6th night, I heard breathing inside the walls. At first, I thought it was wind through the insulation, or maybe a raccoon again. But this wasn't random. It was patterned, like someone hyperventilating just inches behind the drywall. One long inhale, then 3 sharp, desperate exhales, over and over and over, until it stopped. And then a voice whispered, barely audible, like it wasn't sound at all, but thought, "He's still watching." That was the same night I found the mirror. Not the regular one in the bathroom, not even the old dusty one in our attic. This mirror wasn't there before. It was framed into the wall behind the washing machine, embedded so cleanly into the foundation that it looked like it had been built there with the house. No screws, no dust, just glass. At first, I thought it was just that, a mirror, until I realized the reflection was off by 3 seconds. 3 exact seconds. I tested it, waved my hand, waited, saw it move afterward, laughed at first, thinking maybe I was sleep deprived, or losing my mind. But then, on the 7th day, the reflection stopped mimicking me entirely. It just stood there, smiling, my own face, but grinning. Wide, far too wide, lips peeling like old wallpaper, eyes glassy and shaking like they were trying to vibrate out of the sockets. It lifted its hand, pressed it against the glass, and tapped 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. And the sound was behind me. I turned. Nothing. But the mirror version of me didn't turn. It kept staring. I covered the mirror with a top, shoved the washer in front of it, and left the basement lights on. All of them. That night, I finally slept. Hard. The first decent rest in days. I woke up to blood under my fingernails. Now here's where it gets worse. Psychotic even. I started noticing people following me. Everywhere. Not in the horror movie way, where there's a guy in a trench coat standing under a streetlight. Number. It was weirder than that. More casual. More everyday. Like the same Uber Eats guy delivering to my neighbor every single day, even though I never saw my neighbor open the door. Like the old woman sitting in Starbucks with a scarf around her neck in 80-degree weather, mouthing the words of a song that wasn't playing. Like a kid on the city bus filming me with his iPhone, then airdropping the video back to me titled POV, Act 3, Scene 7, The Fool Breaks. I stopped leaving the house after that, but the house didn't want me there either. 2 days later, I got another message. Not a text, not an email, a voicemail from a number labeled No Origin. I played it, expecting static, maybe another whisper, but it was Zach, or at least it sounded like him. The voice was off, like it had been filtered through layers of distortion and sobbing. Bro, you need to go to the place in the folder. Don't wait, don't wait. You're already being rewritten. Do you understand that? You're not real anymore. You're the episode. They're watching it backwards. Then silence. Then screaming. Not like a scared scream. More like ecstatic laughter that turned into a screech. Like someone was laughing so hard their throat tore open mid-chuckle. I didn't know what the folder meant until I looked on Zach's old gaming laptop. There was a folder labeled Kyle's Exit. Inside, a single image. A grainy satellite shot of a desert road. One building. No sign. No cars. No name. Just GPS coordinates in blood-red text. 34.0220 degrees north. 117.9295 degrees west. I looked it up. It was some abandoned motel just outside of West Covina, California, thousands of miles away. I booked the flight. 3 hours later, I was sitting in LAX with nothing but a duffel bag, that damn box cutter, and the photo still burned into my memory. When I got to the motel, it was worse than I imagined. The place was dead. Shuttered windows, rotting wood, a buzzing sound constantly ringing in the background like a bug zapper stuck in your brain. But room 12 was open. I walked inside, and every single wall was covered in screens, some showing live feeds, some showing me, some showing versions of me doing things I had no memory of, crying, screaming, bleeding, standing over Zach's body with a hammer in my hand, and in the middle of the room was a chair, facing a mirror, on the mirror in lipstick. Final scene. Sit down, Carl. And on the chair, taped to the back, was a face mask. Human skin. Not fresh, not fake, just dry, cracking. Zach's eyes were tattooed onto the eyelids. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Just wall. Then the lights clicked off, and all the screens blinked white, one by one. Then I saw it. Every person who had ever watched me. Rows and rows of them. Their faces, their usernames, their bets. Some were smiling, some were screaming, some were recording. And in the center of all the screens was me, staring back, wearing the mask. You don't realize what silence really is until your ears are ringing from how loud it isn't. That motel room, it didn't have air, it had absence, a kind of thick nothing that pressed against your skin like it wanted inside. I was still standing in front of that chair, the one with the skin mask and the mirror. Behind me, the door had disappeared. Where it had been was just moldy wallpaper, peeled back in the shape of a human silhouette, like someone had walked right through it, or melted into it. The screens were all still on. Each one showed a version of me, not like a clone or anything. These were alternate paths. I saw one where I had never gone to the basement and instead was found hanging from my closet door. One where I'd burned the laptop and ended up buried alive in a cornfield, my hands poking through the dirt, still twitching. One where Zach was alive, but we were in a cage, somewhere underground, our eyes gone, just twitching and laughing silently. And all around the edges of the screens, there were view counts, likes, comments, laughing face emojis, thumbs down. Someone typed, "He's breaking," in a live chat. Another person responded with, "Finally, get to the teeth scene, please." I turned to the mirror. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping it wasn't real, but the reflection wasn't mine anymore. It was Zach. Sort of. He was wearing the same clothes he'd disappeared in, but they were soaked, dark and dripping. His hair was matted down, not with water, but something thick, viscous. I thought blood, but then he smiled, and I saw his teeth had been replaced with tiny cameras. Every single tooth, a different lens, all recording me. The mirror vibrated, then cracked. One word bled out across the surface, like it was leaking from inside the glass. Fool. Then I heard the buzzing. It started from the baseboards, like an amp feeding back, but it grew until the sound made the floor ripple. I looked down. Under the carpet, something was crawling. I ripped the fabric back, heart racing, and there, underneath, was a grid of metal grates. Beneath them, faces, dozens of them, some still alive. Most weren't. They were stitched together, mouth to mouth, cheek to cheek, eyelids threaded shut, like some twisted quilt of human skin. Eyes rolled, lips trembled. A few were trying to scream, but the mouths weren't their own anymore. One was mouthing the words to the Pledge of Allegiance. Another kept saying, "Recording started," over and over. Another looked like Zach's mouth, sewn to the face of a little girl who couldn't have been older than 10. I backed away, slipped on something wet, looked down, my own reflection shimmering in a puddle, except it wasn't following me. It blinked twice, smiled, then whispered, "You made it to scene 4. That's where the skin comes off." The walls groaned, not like old wood groans, more like muscle being torn off bone. The screens flickered again. This time, a single interface took over every one of them. It looked like some kind of editing software. YouTube Studio, but wrong. Red background. Tools with labels like censor screams, add viewer reactions, upload skinwalk cut, drag and drop victim. There was a cursor, moving on its own. It dragged my face into a timeline labeled final upload. Then the room went black, except for one thing. A projector on the ceiling clicked on. It displayed a new folder. Fool files, unreleased. I watched in horror as a video began to play. Footage of me, right now, in the room, wearing the skin mask, trembling, looking at the screen. Except in the video, I was smiling, talking. I said, "This is the part where he figures out no one's watching anymore." And that's when I turned to the camera behind me. The one I didn't know was there, and I looked into it, dead-eyed, calm, and said, "He doesn't know yet, but he's been streaming for 3 days." That's when the lights came on, like a set, a full production set, and in front of me were rows of audience seats, filled, people, kids, old men, women in Target uniforms, one dude still wearing a Disney cast member badge. Some were clapping, some crying, some filming me on their phones, all of them wearing identical masks made of transparent human skin. No expressions, just wide, peeled smiles. A man in a butcher's apron stood on the stage beside me. He held a clipboard and a scalpel. He leaned in, nose touching mine, and whispered, "Scene 5 is gonna hurt." But the audience loves that part. Then he carved a line into my arm, not deep, just enough to bleed, enough to spell the next scene's title, Echo Flesh. The blood bubbled like it was boiling on my skin. One of the audience members stood up, started sobbing, walked down the aisle, reached into their coat and pulled out Zach's phone, handed it to me. The screen lit up. A notification appeared. 1,421,092 viewers are watching. Would you like to activate interactive mode? Yes. No. My hand moved on its own. It pressed. Yes. The walls fell away like theater curtains. And suddenly, I wasn't in the motel. I was back in our house. Exactly how it was before. Every detail, every item, except one thing. My body wasn't mine anymore. I was holding the box cutter in one hand, and Zach's face in the other. You ever have one of those dreams where everything looks exactly like real life, but nothing makes sense? Like the laws of physics still apply, but time moves sideways, and your heartbeat sounds like an audience clapping. That's what it felt like when I blinked, and suddenly, I was back in my house. Except it wasn't my house anymore. It was built to look like it. A copy, a replica, like someone had studied every corner of my life, printed it, then built it from memory and pain. Same cracked tiles in the kitchen, same scratch marks on Zach's old bedroom door from when we used to screw around with a BB gun. Same light bulb that flickered in the hallway, but now it flickered in Morse code. I swear to God, it was spelling out, "Stay still." I couldn't move at first, because I wasn't in me. I was watching me, like my eyes had become cameras, locked inside someone else's skull. And I was standing in the living room, holding Zach's face in one hand, not his head, his face, like a mask. The skin was gray, preserved, stitched around the eyes to keep the shape. The lips were bent up at the edges, like someone had sewn a smile into rigor mortis. The box cutter was in my other hand, still wet, still dripping, but it wasn't blood. Not exactly. It was data. The liquid didn't pool on the floor. It absorbed into the laminate, pixelated as it spread, turned the floor into a screen, and then it played footage of me from when I was 7, in the living room, laughing, building Legos, talking to Zach about making YouTube videos when we grew up. But the voice was wrong. It wasn't my voice. It was the audience mimicking me. Thousands of whispers spliced together to form one fake childhood memory. A forced nostalgia written by people who had never met me, but watched me enough to write me. I dropped the box cutter. It didn't hit the floor. It landed on a keyboard. That's when I realized what the floor was. The whole living room, hell, the whole house, was a set. One giant machine. The TV was a monitor. The cabinets were hard drives. Every doorknob was an input jack. And I was in the middle of it. A cursor blinked on the living room wall. waiting for input. Then the walls began typing on their own. Fool has accepted identity overwrite. Fool is no longer the viewer. Fool is now the content. Fool will upload in 0006, I screamed, but no sound came out. Instead, the mirror from the motel appeared in front of me, hovering mid-air, and this time, it wasn't showing me at all. It was showing you. Reading this, right now, your room, your phone, your reflection. You blinked. It blinked back. Then the countdown hit 0. The lights went black, and something warm and wet slid across the back of my neck. I turned, slowly. It was Zach, but not Zach. What stood there was wearing Zach's skin like a coat. It wasn't stitched on. It had grown into him. It pulsed when he breathed. His eyes were upside down, teeth missing in clumps. One ear replaced by an audio jack, a red wire snaking from his skull into the wall behind him, and he was smiling, not from joy, but from relief, like he'd finally become what they wanted. He opened his mouth, and inside was a live feed of me, of now, and above the feed was a timer that read, live, 4,721,112 viewers watching. I dropped my knees, tried to claw the skin off my arms. It wouldn't come off, because it wasn't skin anymore. It was interface, code. I started to glitch. Fingerprints jittered like low bitrate images. My reflection in the broken microwave had lag. I started to feel the weight of every single person watching, like their eyeballs were pressing against me from inside the drywall. I screamed again, but this time it worked. Except my scream didn't come out of my mouth. It came out of Zach's, and not just his. All of them. The basement grates cracked open, and a flood of skinless, eyeless, smiling things crawled out, dragging their own faces behind them like wedding veils. Every single one was wearing a version of me. One had my middle school haircut. Another was in my graduation gown. One looked like me from the live stream when I first found the mirror. They started circling, and then they all spoke in unison. My voice. Time to finish the upload. Then the projector on the ceiling fired up and played a live version of the next hour. Not the past, the future. It showed what I was about to do, step by step. Me carving my face off with the box cutter. Me stitching Zach's onto mine. Me walking out the front door, which was now a USB port the size of a doorway. Me uploading myself into a network called Echo Flesh. And the worst part, I watched me smile. I liked it. I wanted it. I was grateful. The walls started to collapse into static. The house unraveled like film burning in reverse. The sky turned into a ceiling covered in thousands of cameras, all zooming in. One final screen remained. Just one. It flickered. Showed me. Then showed you again. Then showed a line of text. Thank you for watching the Fool Files trademark. Season 1 complete. Please rate this episode before exiting. Warning. Exit denied. Viewer has been converted to streamer. Welcome to Echo Flesh. Username. You're trending. I haven't been Kyle since then. I'm just feed number A741C9. Streaming 24/7. No breaks, no sleep, no choice. And somewhere, you're next. The Fool Files. End of Season 1. Executable has been installed. Would you like me to generate a terrifying image based on this final scene? I saw something wearing a face mask on the dark web. The next day, I saw it on the subway. All right, so I know how this sounds. Oh, look, Another edgy Reddit creepypasta about the dark web. Trust me, I used to roll my eyes at this kind of stuff too. I'm not one of those people who claims they hacked into the Pentagon or watched a human sacrifice on a live stream or whatever. I'm just a regular dude who spends too much time on the internet. And honestly, that's probably what got me into this whole mess. For context, I'm a 23-year-old college dropout living in Queens, New York. I work part-time at this 24-hour Starbucks near Times Square, mostly night shifts. It's not glamorous, but it pays rent and gives me plenty of free time. And yeah, I spend most of that time online. Reddit, Discord, YouTube, Twitch, the usual. I used to be deep into the iceberg videos rabbit hole, like the YouTube iceberg explained kind of stuff. You ever see one of those charts where it starts with surface level internet and gets darker the deeper you go? Yeah, that. So naturally, curiosity got the best of me, and I started exploring the deep web. Not the dark web exactly, at first. Just the Tor browser kind of stuff. Hidden wikis, dead marketplaces, weird forums. It felt like walking through the internet's abandoned basement. Mostly junk, a lot of scams, but once in a while, I'd find something that made my stomach twist a little. Not because it was illegal, just off. Like the vibe was wrong. Like you were somewhere you shouldn't be. Anyway, one night, it was a Tuesday. I remember that because I had just come off a dead shift and the store had run out of oat milk, which had weirdly pissed off like 4 people in a row. I got home around 3 a.m. I was wired, too tired to sleep, too awake to rest. So I lit up my vape, got under my blanket, and decided to dig around on Tor for a bit. I ended up on this forum that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2011. Black background, red text, edgy names like R. Zerg T. Enthrode, and Faceless Arine. It was called The Blind Theater. Most of it was trash. Some clickbait titles like Watch the Dead Breathe and Girl Turns to Static on livestream. But one thread caught my eye. It was titled simply, Live, the Man with No Mouth. There was a link under it, Onion Domain, and a comment that said, Masks hide pain, his hides hunger. Don't let him see you. So, yeah, creepy as hell. But I clicked. Because of course I did. The stream was grainy, like 144p VHS horror movie vibes. It looked like a hospital room, maybe, or a morgue. One flickering overhead light, cold tile floors, no sound, just this constant hum, like an old fridge compressor. And in the center of the room, sitting in a metal chair, was a thing. I say thing because I'm still not sure if it was human. It looked human, sort of. It wore a dirty off-white hoodie, gray sweatpants, and one of those cheap blue disposable face masks, the kind everyone was wearing back in 2020. But here's the thing, the mask, it was wet, like soaked through, and it pulsed. I don't even know how to explain that right, but it pulsed like something inside was breathing. At first, I thought it was just someone doing some weird ARG performance art, but then it looked directly at the camera. Dead on. No lag. Like it knew I was watching. I sat there frozen. The man, or whatever it was, didn't move much. Just sat there, staring, breathing slow and heavy. You could see the mask inflate, deflate, and even though I couldn't see his mouth, I swear to God, I could hear breathing on my end, not through the speakers, like in the room with me. At one point, he stood up. Now I could see he was tall, really tall, like NBA player proportions, but weirdly stretched. He walked to the corner of the room and picked up something from the floor. It was a mirror, He held it up to his own face. The reflection didn't match. In the mirror, the mask was off, and where his mouth should have been, there was just this vertical slit, like someone had zipped open the middle of his face. Rows of tiny twitching teeth lined the inside, sharp and uneven, like they grew in sideways. There were no lips, no jaw, just that raw, twitching mouth, like something halfway between a shark and a leech. Then, get this, he looked out from the mirror, not at himself, but at me. I don't mean he looked at the camera. I mean he looked like he could see me through the screen, like he could reach through it. I slammed my laptop shut so hard, I thought I cracked the screen. I sat in silence for a minute, heart pounding like crazy. The air felt heavy, like the room was watching me back. And here's where it gets worse. The next day, I had a shift at Starbucks. I was on bar duty, half asleep, making some tourist a vanilla latte when I noticed someone in line. He was tall, wearing a dirty hoodie, sweatpants, blue disposable mask, just standing there, not ordering, not moving, just watching me. Our eyes locked, and even though I couldn't see his face, I knew it was him, the man with no mouth. I didn't sleep that night, not in the dramatic, I was too scared to sleep way, but in the literal, eyes glued open, pulse in my throat, every shadow looks alive kind of way. You know that feeling when you've just watched a really twisted horror movie and your brain keeps playing loops of the creepiest part on repeat, but then multiply that by 10 and inject it straight into your spine. That's how I felt. Except I wasn't watching a movie. I saw that man. He saw me. The next morning, I told myself I imagined it. Maybe it was just someone wearing a similar hoodie and mask. Tons of people still wear those cheap blue masks, especially in the subway. New York City is full of weirdos, I told myself. I just happened to run into one with a similar vibe. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling, so I avoided the subway that day. I walked everywhere, an hour and a half to work under the heat, dodging taxis and cracked sidewalks like a lunatic. Didn't care. I'd rather risk a sunburn and shin splints than get on a train and end up locked in a car with that thing. But eventually, I had to ride again. It was a Thursday. I had a late shift, and by the time I clocked out, the city was already dead. You know, that weird dead hour between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. when even Times Square starts to look abandoned. That kind of quiet makes the world feel wrong, empty, but not safe. I stood on the Q platform at 34th Street, Herald Square, earbuds in, hoodie up, just trying to exist. The train came screeching in. Doors hissed open. I stepped inside, dead center of the car. Only two other people. A guy slouched near the far end in a pizza delivery uniform, probably asleep, and a girl across from me, scrolling on her phone, TikTok playing out loud, something about a girl catching her boyfriend cheating at Coachella. Normal stuff, human stuff. I almost relaxed until the lights flickered. You ever notice how subway lights always seem to flicker right before something feels wrong? Like they know something you don't? They went dim, not off, but enough to tint everything that weird pale green. Then I saw movement from the door at the far end of the car. It slid open slowly, not like how train doors usually open, quick and jerky. This was deliberate, quiet, and then he stepped in. Same hoodie, same sweatpants, same blue surgical mask. But now, up close, I noticed something I hadn't before. His mask was stitched onto his face. Tiny black threads ran from the edges of the mask and pierced through his skin, his actual skin, like someone had sewn it into the flesh. His eyes were dead white, like cataracts, but still moved with purpose. He scanned the car. The girl didn't look up, still scrolling, still listening to some stupid remix. He stepped forward. The lights flickered again, and that's when I saw it, underneath his hoodie, poking out of the neckline. Skin that wasn't skin. It looked like wax, yellowish, sagging, like it had been peeled from someone else and barely clung to his frame. He walked past the girl. She didn't even flinch. I stood frozen, too scared to look directly at him. I tried to make myself small, invisible, eyes glued to the ad above the seats, some cringy Spotify ad about meditation and scented energy. He stopped in front of me, and then he breathed. Not loud, not dramatic, just this wet, rasping inhale, like someone sucking air through mucus and broken glass. I glanced up. His eyes met mine. He knew. And then something impossible happened. My phone started playing static. Loud, unbearable, ear-splitting static that overpowered even the train noise. I yanked out my earbuds, but it didn't stop. The sound kept pouring out, even though Spotify wasn't open. My screen went black, then white, then showed a single image. Me. It was a photo of me, taken from behind, sitting at my Starbucks register. Timestamp. Yesterday. I nearly dropped the phone. I looked back at him, and I swear to God, he was holding something now. A face. Not a mask. A real flayed face, limp and dripping. He held it by the eye holes, like it was a Halloween prop, except the skin was too real. The kind of real that makes your stomach clench. The kind of real that smells like blood and rot even through the glass of the subway. He didn't say anything. He just tossed it on the ground in front of me. Slap. It hit the floor wet. I stared at it, horrified, and then looked up again. He was gone. Just like that. No footsteps. No doors opening. No flicker. He just vanished. The train screeched to a stop at 42nd Street, and I ran. I ran out the car, up the stairs, past the metro offices, straight into the city night, like my life depended on it. It gets worse. When I got home, my front door was unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. Ever. I checked every room. Nothing was touched. Nothing taken. But there was something left. On my desk was a USB drive. Plain, black, no label. I stared at it for like 30 minutes before I plugged it in. I don't even know why I did. Morbid curiosity, maybe. Or maybe because I knew he wanted me to. The drive had one file, a video. I opened it. It was grainy, just like the stream. The same flickering light. Same room. But now there were bodies. 6 of them, hung upside down like slabs of meat in a butcher's freezer. Their faces had been peeled off, literally peeled, the way you'd skin an orange. They weren't just dead. They looked emptied. And in the center, sitting calmly, was him, the man with no mouth. Except now, he had my face. He was wearing it. It sagged unnaturally over his skull, stretched tight in some places and loose in others. His eyes looked through the sockets like he was trying it on, adjusting, practicing, and then he smiled, not with the mouth on the face, with the slit below, that horrible, zipper-like slit across his throat that stretched wide and wet, full of those tiny crooked teeth, like maggots grinding against each other. Then the screen cut to black, and a message popped up in red, glitchy font. Tomorrow, we switch. You ever feel like you've already died and your body's just playing out the final seconds before it figures it out? That's how I felt when I saw that message. Tomorrow, we switch. I didn't sleep again. I didn't even sit down. I just stood in the middle of my apartment for hours, arms limp at my sides, eyes fixed on nothing, waiting. The way people freeze when they hear something breathing behind them in a dark hallway. Except in my case, the breath was inside my head, wet, labored, like lungs full of water, and I swear it never stopped. At some point around 5 a.m., I started packing, not because I had a plan, just instinct. Phone, charger, hoodie, my old passport, a couple hundred in cash I'd stuffed in a sock drawer 2 years ago. I didn't even look in the mirror when I left. I didn't want to see if something had changed. I took a lift to LaGuardia, paid cash, walked around like I had somewhere to be. I didn't. I just couldn't go back home. Couldn't go back anywhere. By noon, I was in the airport bathroom, locked in a stall, shaking like a freak. That's when I saw it again. It started on the mirror, right above the sink, etched into the glass, like someone had clawed it with a key. "You look hungry." I stared at it through the stall crack. Then, below the text, a face, drawn in what looked like dried blood, mask hollow eyes, slit mouth. That thing. I bolted out of the stall so fast, I nearly broke the door. No one was around, not a single soul, not in a New York airport bathroom. That shouldn't be possible. I turned to run, and I saw myself, not in a mirror, standing in the doorway, wearing my exact clothes, my hoodie, my face, but the eyes, they weren't mine. They were like glass eyes in a taxidermy animal, soulless, shiny, watching. He tilted his head, like a bird, or a predator. Then without a word, he opened his mouth, not the lips, the slit. It unfolded like someone unzipping a body bag, revealing that same horrifying pit of mismatched teeth, twitching and wet. The sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was like all screams, layered, echoing, like every scream I've ever made or heard or thought was inside that throat. I blacked out. I'm not even joking. My brain just bailed, like it pulled the emergency brake and said nope. I don't remember falling, don't remember the EMTS. I woke up in a hospital bed at Mount Sinai with an IV in my arm and a dull ache in my head. The doctor said I collapsed from extreme dehydration and exhaustion. But here's the thing. When I looked in the mirror above the sink in the hospital bathroom, I didn't recognize the face. It wasn't quite mine. It looked like me. Same bone structure, same jawline, but the skin was too pale, too loose in spots, like a rubber mask stretched over someone else. My eyes looked wrong, cloudier, almost glassy. I blinked. The reflection didn't. I smashed the mirror with my fist. Didn't even feel the glass cut. I just ran. I left the hospital wearing the patient scrubs. My old clothes were gone. So was my phone. Everything was unraveling. I wandered the city for hours in a daze, like some post-apocalyptic NPC. Times Square, Central Park, even ended up outside the Empire State Building, just staring up, like it would give me answers. It didn't, but at least there were people, noise, life, safety in the chaos. Until night fell. That's when I started seeing the others. They were everywhere, wearing surgical masks, staring at me through crowds, on subway platforms, through the windows of cars stuck in traffic. Every one of them identical. Same building, same limp, same stitched mask and glossy stare. And under those masks, I knew what hid there. Teeth. Wet teeth. But it wasn't until I ducked into a late-night McDonald's on Canal Street that I realized how bad it had gotten. I went in to use the bathroom, desperate to just splash cold water on my face, maybe feel human again. I walked in, and someone was already at the sink, tall, wearing a surgical mask, and he was peeling it off, slowly, thread by thread, like he was unzipping his face. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to look, but my body didn't listen. Underneath the mask, his skin was gone, like, completely gone. Just glistening red muscle, tendons twitching, raw and exposed. His eyes met mine in the mirror. He grinned with a slit, and as he stepped aside, I saw what was scrawled on the wall in something dark and sticky. "You took a face. Give it back." I screamed, not quietly. Full-on primal shriek. I ran out of there, and people didn't even look up. Not even the guy at the counter flipping burgers. Not even the drunk couple fighting by the soda machine. Like I wasn't real. That's when I knew. Something had switched. I was becoming one of them. That night, I hid under an overpass in Brooklyn, curled up under my hoodie, like a dying animal. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Saw myself, wearing me, talking to people with my voice, smiling with that slit, and feeding on things I couldn't see. By dawn, I had made a decision. I had to go back to the source, the stream. So I used a public library terminal, old as hell, like 2010 era Dell, still had Yahoo set as default browser, downloaded Tor, revisited the same forums. They were gone, every single one. Dead links, 404s, black screens, like the internet had been scrubbed, except for one. A site with no title, just a blank black page with a blinking cursor. It typed by itself. "You should have never looked." Then the screen flickered, and I saw it. A live stream of me, in real time. But I wasn't alone. I was strapped to a metal chair in the same flickering room. Across from me was him, the one wearing my face. Except now, the camera angle changed, and I saw what was behind me. Hundreds of masks, sewn onto the walls, still, breathing, some of them sobbing, some of them twitching, all of them alive. He walked up to me in the stream and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel it. My ears began to bleed. Blood ran down the sides of my head and dripped onto the library keyboard. No one noticed. The screen went black again. Final message. Faces feed. You're next on the wall. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if I'm still me. I look in the mirror and something twitches. Sometimes I blink and my reflection doesn't. Sometimes I laugh and I hear it in his voice. Wet, crooked, inhuman. I don't think I escaped. I think I'm already hanging on that wall. Just another breathing mask. There's a silence that doesn't belong to this world. Not the kind of silence you find in a library, or a funeral home, or a snowy forest. I'm talking about a silence that devours, the kind that wraps around your head like a plastic bag and seals itself shut while you're still breathing. That's the silence I woke up to, or thought I woke up to. I still don't know what's real anymore. All I remember is the cold and the smell. Imagine someone took roadkill, wet, bloated, split open at the belly, and left it under a heat lamp in a basement for a week. Then mix that with the metallic tang of fresh blood and the plastic stink of medical gloves. That was the air. That was the taste. I couldn't move. My body was bound to something metal. My arms were stretched out, wrists tied with barbed wire that had already chewed halfway into my flesh. I could feel the meat of my forearms swelling around it, like it was being eaten from the inside. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt split. I tried to scream, but the only sound that came out was static, literal static, like radio interference. a wet, garbled buzz that made my own ears vibrate. And then I heard them. The walls were breathing, not in a poetic way, not metaphor. They were alive. The walls were made of faces, hundreds, maybe thousands, of surgical masks, stitched in rows from floor to ceiling, sagging and pulsing like lungs. But they weren't just hanging there. They were moving, writhing. Some twitched, some sobbed, some made low, gurgling groans like they were trying to speak but didn't have the muscles for it. I looked closer. They weren't masks. They were faces, human skin hollowed out, sewn shut where the eyes should be, with black thread looping through the mouth and nose, like someone had tried to stop them from screaming. Some of them were still alive. One of them, the one closest to me, moved its mouth in slow, jerky spasms. The thread pulled tight against torn lips, leaking thick pus and saliva. The flesh quivered like it was trying to beg. I think it was trying to warn me. Then the lights flickered, and I saw him. He didn't walk in. He unfolded from the wall, like a shadow that peeled itself out of the meat. He was taller than I remembered. His hoodie was soaked, the front of it bulging like something inside was trying to claw its way out. The surgical mask was still sewn onto his face, but the threads were bleeding. Little black rivulets oozing down his neck, soaking the collar of the sweatshirt. He stood at the edge of the room and tilted his head, and I felt something shift inside me. I swear to God, I felt my spine unzip, not literally, but internally, like someone had reached through my back and started peeling me apart from the inside out. He didn't speak. He never speaks. But something began to play. From the far corner of the room, an old CRT television flickered to life. Grainy, snow-filled, antenna twitching like insect legs. The screen buzzed for a few seconds, then cleared. And it was me, back at Starbucks, pouring drinks, taking orders, smiling. But I wasn't in control. I was watching myself, or someone in my skin, wearing my face like a Halloween mask. My mouth moved, but the words weren't mine. The audio was distorted, echoing, almost demonic. Do you want that iced or dead? Try our new blood-infused mocha. Flesh or bones with that croissant? No one around me noticed. Customers laughed, took their drinks, smiled. One guy patted my back like we were friends. It wasn't just mimicry. It was possession. I realized the creature, he, had taken my life, slipped into it like a suit, wore my identity, and no one noticed, because all it took was a face. Suddenly, the screen glitched, the image warped, and now I saw him. From the other side of the mask, from inside, everything was red. Veins, muscles, the slick wetness of being trapped beneath a human skin. That's when I understood. The masks weren't just decoration. They were gateways. Faces are the key. The flesh around our skulls, that's the doorway. When he takes your face, he enters your world. When you wear the mask long enough, he enters you. My body began to spasm. My skin was crawling. Literally. Something was moving under it. Tiny bulges, like worms trying to escape from underneath. My fingertips bent backward. I screamed again, but only static came out. The creature stepped forward. He held something in his hands. A mask. My face. He pressed it against my head. I felt the flesh stick to mine, like it was grafting on. My vision blurred. My brain pulsed like a dying hard drive. My thoughts started to fragment. I couldn't tell if I was wearing the face or if it was wearing me. Suddenly, everything went black, and when I opened my eyes again, I was back in the real world. I was on the subway, the Q train, riding uptown, same time of night, Same flickering lights, except now, everyone else was wearing masks. Every passenger, every man, woman, kid, blue surgical masks. All of them. But these weren't for health. They were moving, twitching. I stood up in a daze and looked down at my reflection in the window. I wasn't wearing my own face. I was wearing his. And behind me, in the glass, I saw him. Not outside. Inside me. Smiling with the slit. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One new notification. Face stream live at .onion. You are now live. 1.4 million viewers. Then the screen began filling with comments. All from usernames I didn't recognize. Take it off. Peel him slow. I want to hear the eyes pop. Feed us. Let him scream in static. We switch tonight. And the last one. You're just skin now. There's no waking up from this. I know that now. This isn't some sleep paralysis demon you snap out of after screaming yourself awake. This isn't a nightmare you brush off over cereal and a scroll through TikTok. This is a permanent fracture in reality. Something broke, and it was me. You want to know how it ends? I'll tell you everything, but when you're done reading this, you'll wish you never knew. That night on the train, staring into my own reflection, my face stretching wrong across my skull, something snapped behind my eyes. A tiny pop, like the moment a rubber band finally gives out after hours of tension. I touched my cheek. The skin shifted, not like skin should, not elastic, not soft. It slid, like a glove being pulled too tight over the wrong-sized hand. I felt a seam under my jaw. It wasn't a scar, it was a zipper. It ran from ear to ear beneath my face, stitched tight with black surgical thread. I pressed a little too hard, and one of the threads snapped. The pain was unreal, like needles dipped in acid, tearing into exposed nerves. I collapsed in the middle of the subway car, twitching, spasming, trying to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. It just buzzed, like TV static stuck inside my throat. Around me, no one moved. Every single passenger just watched, not like people, not curious, not concerned. They were waiting. The train doors opened. I didn't even register the stop. Hands grabbed me. Too many hands, cold and wet and wrong. Some felt like leather, some like bone. One felt like raw meat left out in the sun. They dragged me downstairs that weren't there before, behind walls that should have been solid. The city folded open like it wanted me gone from its surface. We descended into a space that shouldn't exist. Beneath New York's subways is just dirt and bedrock and concrete. Right? Wrong. There's something deeper. A tunnel of black flesh, throbbing with veins that pulsed to the rhythm of 1,000 heartbeats. The walls were wet and warm, like I was inside a dying animal. Every step we took, the floor squished. I begged. I tried to. But my voice didn't belong to me anymore. When I looked down, my hands weren't mine either. They were plastic, translucent, like surgical gloves, filled with fluid, bloated and twitching. My fingers bent backwards, and my nails melted into little globs like wax teeth. Then we reached the room, not the one from the stream. Worse, this one was alive. The ceiling breathed, the floor bled. The walls weren't just covered in faces now. They were made of bodies, twisted torsos, fused together, arms bent into unnatural shapes, like tree roots choking each other, ribs that split open to form doors, mouths that led nowhere, eyes that blinked even when cut in half. And in the center, standing on a pile of spines, was him, the thing that started it all, the man with no mouth. But he wasn't a man anymore. He was wearing every face he'd stolen, layered, one over the other, peeling, melting, dripping. You could see the outlines of people, bits of nose, scraps of jaw, eyelids that twitched in agony, trapped in a stack of skin like pages in a rotten book. He stepped forward, and the entire pile of corpses shifted beneath him like gravel. He knelt down and reached for me, and that's when I felt it. My soul unzip. It sounds dramatic. It sounds like some edgy metaphor. But no, it was literal. I felt my spirit, if you can call it that, being unzipped from my body like a cheap Halloween costume, peeled away layer by layer until only one thing was left. My face. Not my identity. Just the face. He plucked it off me with those long, knife-like fingers, peeled it clean like removing the label from a jar. I felt everything, every nerve fiber, every blood vessel, every inch of skin scream as it was removed. And then he held it up to the wall. Dozens of other versions of me were already hanging there. Faces of me smiling, crying, screaming. Some split open and stitched back together in the wrong order. Some had extra mouths. One had no eyes, just holes that kept dripping teeth. He pressed my face onto the wall. It stuck immediately, melded, absorbed, and I was still in it. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, only watch, forever. And here's the part you won't believe, the part that hurts the most. I can still feel the real world. I'm still connected to it. Through the streams, through your screens, every time you load some cursed link, some weird .onion stream, every time you see a pop-up that vanishes too fast, or an ad that flickers before it loads. That's us. We're trying to get out. He uses our faces like portals, and the more you watch, the more real he becomes. He's everywhere now. Subways, airports, fast food bathrooms, security cams in 7-Elevens. He's feeding on the digital reflection of your face. Every filtered selfie, every Snapchat lens, every dumb TikTok trend with your face warped into something else. That's him reaching through. You gave him permission. We all did. You clicked the terms. You opened the camera. You smiled. And now he knows you. Now he's wearing you. I'm writing this from inside. I've learned how to project through broken signals, through corrupted feeds. If you're reading this, you're already marked. You're next. Tomorrow, when you check the mirror and your reflection blinks out of sync, run. If you hear your phone buzz and there's a video file named FaceFeed1, don't watch it. Don't click. Don't smile. Because that's his favorite part. When your expression locks into place, when your skin goes still, when your mouth can no longer scream, only hiss like static.